a pretty one, Ulysses. There it is.
Hello BookTube, I'm Sean the Book Maniac. Welcome back to my channel. Here I am with another In Other Words. This is an occasional series where I talk about vocabulary, grammatical patterns, idioms that I encounter in my reading. This has become somewhat popular. All things being relative, popular on my channel is just a very relative thing, but certain of my subscribers really enjoy it, and I do want to often remind new viewers that I am not holding myself up as some kind of an expert. I am an ESL teacher. I do have a master's degree in English, but that doesn't mean diddly squat. I just love finding out about new words, and everything I'm telling you, none of it I pulled out of my own brain, and everything I pulled offline. So let's put that out there. And some of the most fascinating aspects of this project are the comments below. So check those out, because that's maybe where the real intelligence resides. I have a swack of new vocabulary for you, and most of it comes from this new novel, Old Baggage by LISSA Evans, 2018 novel. And it's a novel that I didn't end up loving, but started out really good, and most people love it, so who cares what I think. But it had a lot of great vocabulary. So most of today's, in other words, is coming from. So she's a British writer, and the story is set in the 1928, most of it. But it's a historical novel, so I think a lot of these phrases are not with us today so much, but were more widely used back in those times. The first one is helter-skelter. Well, I know helter-skelter, you know helter-skelter. It means disorder or confusion, but I had no idea until I looked it up because of its use in this book on page 5, that it also means a fairground amusement, which consists of a tall spiral slide winding around a tower. Here's some pictures. So let's talk about the original meaning. It dates as an adverb from the late 16th century, and it's just a rhyming jingle, or one page I found called it a rhyming reduplication, helter-skelter. There's lots like that, right? Willy-nilly, those kind of phrases. But neither helter or skelter have any independent meaning. There is some conjecture among linguists that skelter comes from the Middle English verb skelt, which meant hasten, but nobody knows for sure. Helter-skelter, meaning disorder and confusion, became more widespread, had a bit of a renaissance in the 1960s, unfortunately, because of Charles Manson. He used that as his name for this apocalyptic war between the races that was going to break out, and which Trump will probably bring to fruition. The ride comes from the Beatles song of the same name. I wasn't aware of that song, and I won't be able to include it here without getting my video banned for a copyright violation, but we can all go check the Beatles song if we didn't know it. I certainly didn't. Other names for that amusement park ride are the Canadian slide. I've never seen anything that looked like those things I showed you. Alpine glide, the lighthouse slip, that one fits. Slipping the slip, that's the name. Slipping the slip, and glacier slip. Oh my. The next one is flibbertigibbet, and I know this, and I was trying to think, why do I know it? It's from The Sound of Music. Anybody who watched that movie might remember this word. It's in one of the songs. How do you solve a problem like Maria? A flibbertigibbet, a will-o'-the-wisp, a clown. Juan, move over. I'm taking over the singing talent side portion of YouTube BookTube. But that's why I know it. So a flibbertigibbet is a chattering, gossipy, flighty woman. So it's not a very nice word. They think it came just as again, like kind of a nonsense word that meant to onomatopoetically imitate the sound of fast-talking flibbertigibbet. Dates from about 1600. So there you go. So moving on. Ginger Up was interesting to me. I'd never heard of it. This novel, one of the main character is a political activist. She's a feminist in 1928 UK and had been a prominent suffragette. And there's reference to her gingering up an audience. I go, what? Well, it means it's an informal British phrasal verb that means to make something or someone more exciting or lively. I was hoping it had some sensual Prince Harry vibe happening, but it doesn't. So it means to excite or enthuse, which is what happens to me every time I look at a picture of Prince Harry. But also to get someone's ginger up is to excite someone. So apparently, according to the classical dictionary of the vulgar tongue, it goes back to a famous, very unpleasant practice which involved putting ginger, the actual, is it a vegetable? Root, whatever it is, up a horse's fundament. And so here I am. I'm just going to embarrass myself by saying I have no idea exactly what fundament is. So let's, and you're all laughing at me, but fundament, I'm going to guess it's like the anus or something. Oh, yeah. Formal or humorous, a person's buttocks or anus. Well, suddenly, overnight, I've become a fundamentalist. Okay. So this webpage says the link between that practice, which is how to get a horse going and excited or lively, you'd stick a piece of ginger up its bum. Okay. Aside from the classical dictionary of the vulgar tongue, which was written in 1785, nobody else proposes that etymological origin. Darn it all. And then it disappears from the language in the mid-19th century, and it comes back in the late 19th century in American football. Talking about baseball players gingering themselves up and getting more lively. But, yeah. Francis Gross in a classical dictionary of the vulgar tongue. Oh my goodness. Just for the record, I did not know the purported origin of ginger someone up when I was waxing romantic about Prince Harry. For the record. The next one is moue of frustration. Oh, I didn't ever check. Pronunciation. Here's the Oxford Dictionary. Pronunciation.
Moo.
Oh, moo. It sounds like a cow. Moo. Okay. So it means, it comes from the French, but it's apparently has been used in English. I'd never heard of it. A pouting expression used to convey annoyance or distaste. Let's look at a few pictures. It just means pout. And it actually literally refers in French to the lips. So that's moo. Moo. You're not supposed to make the sound, just the lips. Oh, this one's a good one. So someone in the novel sat back with a moue of disappointment or a moue of dissatisfaction or something. So moue, pout. This one originally wasn't on my list, but I thought I might as well talk about it because it's in the same sentence as the piece of vocabulary that I want to talk about. So first, let's talk about dabble. I think most of us know what dabble means. I knew. The figurative meaning that we're most used today means to have an interest in activity in a casual or superficial way. Somewhat popular, all things being relative. Popular on my channel is just a very relative thing, but certain of my subscribers really enjoy it, and I don't do very much of it, but you're casually interested in it. The original meaning of dabble was to make something slightly wet or soiled by spattering or sprinkling a liquid on it. So in the novel, the protagonist gets insulted by a former suffragette colleague who has now turned fascist in 1928 UK. And this other woman insults her by saying that her political work is mere dabbling. And the protagonist is really offended by that. And the novel says the mimsy ephemeral implication of that verb, dabbling, was what offended her so deeply. So mimsy was new to me. And it's an adjective that means rather feeble and prim or affected. Mimsy. Has a variety of spellings. A more elaborated version of this is miminy piminy or niminy piminy. Lewis Carroll used it in Jabberwocky. All mimsy were the Borogoves. I don't know what that means. But so there you go. That was fascinating. Mimsy. Whizzo. is a British exclamation, or usually used as an exclamation, and it's to express wonder or approval, like kind of wow or fabulous or something. They think it comes from wizard or wise. So foolscap is the next one, and I know what foolscap is because we used it in school when I was a young person in 1970s Canada. Foolscap, but it didn't ever dawn on me, and maybe I'm just late to the foolscap party, but it never dawned on me where it came from. Why do we call it fool's cap? And it wasn't until I saw it in this novel that I looked it up. So, yes, a fool's cap is the type of cap worn by a jester. Here's an image of that. And that fool's cap dates back to the 1630s, but from around 1700, it became a type of writing paper. Why? Why the writing paper? Well, apparently, and the writing paper, you young'uns out there, did you use foolscap? It's about 330 millimeters by 200 millimeters, or in some locales by 400 millimeters. But anyway, the original foolscap paper had a fool's cap as a watermark. So here's an example or two of that. So that's where the name comes from. I never even heard the two words in there, fool's cap, which, makes me think of cupboard. Cupboard. You don't hear it because of the way the pronunciation shifts. The next one is scarper, and it's a verb that means, it's an informal British verb that means run away. They scarpered off with the cash or something. It dates from the mid-19th century, and people are pretty sure it comes from the Italian verb scappare, which means to escape. No, not 19th century. They think it dates from the 17th century. And one site I found said that it's been incorporated into the Polari language. Now, Polari is the British gay Peg Latin, or British gay slang, but it's such an elaborate system that it's almost a separate language or dialect. It's a form of theatrical slang incorporating Italianate words, rhyming slang, and Romany. Ooh. Used especially by gay people. It says here homosexuals, which is a word that I loathe. So scarper was incorporated into that. That's interesting. I would like to do more of a deep dive on Polari, but I won't do that now. Next, all-rounder. Somebody in the novel is referred to as a splendid all-rounder. So it's somebody who's versatile, somebody who can do a lot of things very well. Well-rounded, right? An all-rounder. The first few references I found said it went back to cricket, somebody who can bat and bowl well. I don't know anything about cricket, but apparently those two activities are required. Because apparently most cricketers are either good at batting or good at bowling. I'm sure the Polari pansies have a field day with that lingo. But in fact, all round dates way back to the early 18th century. Meaning able to do a lot of things well. That's all the vocabulary from Old Baggage, and what a fabulous list of vocab. I read this Canadian classic novel published in about 1945, Sinclair Ross, As For Me and My House. It was a reread for me, and I was quite disappointed by it on a reread, actually. But there was only one word in here that I wanted to talk about. Doughty. I never checked. Better check the pronunciation.
The following pronunciation is brought to you by pronouncenames.com.
Doughty.
And doughty means brave and persistent. I'd never heard of it. It's from the Middle English doughty, from the Old English dotig, competent, good, and valiant. Goes back to Proto-Germanic and Middle High German and Danish and Russian, all Greek, Gothic, all of those have some variation of this word. Not very often used after the 17th century, other than in a deliberately archaic or mock heroic way. So, I don't know why Sinclair Ross used it in 1945 in Saskatchewan, but there you go. And just a handful more from this translated novel, Angel of Oblivion by Mata Hatterlap, translated from the German by Tess Lewis. The first one is folderol, also spelled and pronounced folderol, and I'd heard of it and I couldn't exactly remember, but it's just trivial, nonsensical fuss. It's very dated. Silliness, silly stuff. Making a fuss over something silly. Folderol. Apparently, they think it comes from the 18th century just as one of many nonsense words that were in songs that meant some kind of a trifle. First reference, 1820. Folderol. And the last one is a verb phrase. Go to ground. To the degree that anybody uses it today, I'd never heard it. The figurative meaning is to hide yourself away, but the original meaning was for a fox or some other of that kind of animal to enter its burrow, which is a way of hiding. But for people, it's a way of hiding, becoming inaccessible, especially for a long time. It's used in modern times in a sporting context. Rugby in New Zealand, 2009. In this novel, one of the characters was embarrassed or ashamed, and he went to ground. He hid himself away. Go to ground. All right, so that's it for this installment of In Other Words. Have you heard any of these words before? Have I made any mistakes? Do you have anything to add? Please give me your comments below. Thanks for watching.